I will lay me down to sleep and I will awake again because the good Lord sustains me. Hello, good morning. You bang on time for Decision 2017. It is the 4th of September 2017 and already we have a lot lined up for you. This is a beautiful day that the good Lord has afforded us and we're eagerly wait to see what it holds for us. Already you can see in studio as well. He's woken up very early. This is a Governor of Kisumu, Professor Anyang Nyong'o. Good morning. And good to see you. Good. Very early today. Yes. Right, we shall be discussing a lot of issues this morning here on Decision 2017. But of course, we turn our focus on what is happening with the Supreme Court right now. Kenyans have struggled for decades to institutionalize the rule of law. We have fought, shed blood, lost lives and property in search of constitutional order. Intrinsic in this is the desire to establish independent institutions that provide checks and balances against each other. It has been a quest to give voice and secure the sovereignty of the people. And sovereignty of the people is delegated to Parliament, the Executive, and the Judiciary, which institutions are obliged to exercise that authority prudently and judiciously. The cancellation of the election of the President Uhuru Kenyatta by the Supreme Court is the single most outstanding explication of the supremacy of the rule of law and maturation of our democracy. It demonstrated independence of the judiciary and signaled the end of the era of impunity that has painfully assailed this country for far too long. Chief Justice David Ndaragwa captured this in his preamble of a ruling, postulating that the greatness of any nation lies in its fidelity to the Constitution and adherence to the rule of law. The Constitution must have the teeth to bite and protect the right and the will of the people. Although it is in order for the National Super Alliance leader Raila Odinga and his deputy Kalonzo Musyoka and their supporters, of course, they have reason to celebrate the outcome. Really, this is not a win for NASA or a loss for Jubilee Party. It is a triumph of the will of the people. And henceforth, this must reign supremely. And of course, we shall be drilling deeper in this and a raft of other issues here on Decision 2017. Remember also, you can ride the show with me. You can chime in, hit us on Twitter. Of course, you can use the hashtag AMLiveNTV or Decision 2017. And of course, we shall be sampling some of your views as well in the course of the program. For now, let's see what is the good, the bad, and the ugly in our dailies this morning. This is hot off the press this morning. Political storm as NASA Jubilee back to vote hunt, I should say. This is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Elections parties want Embattled Elections Commission to set new voting date. With both Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga claiming victory in the lost polls, the stage is once again set for a frenetic episode of political bedlam. This is the story that you want to follow on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation today. Also, we have quotes from some of the leaders. From William Ruto, he says, quote-unquote, 4 Kenyan judges staged a coup against the will of the people of Kenya. They booked a permanent place of shame in the history of our country. And also, we have Raila Odinga saying, had the IBC granted access to servers, there will have been no need to go for a fresh poll, I should say. I will have been declared the winner. And this story continues inside the Daily Nation today. Also, cholera scare for police on petition duty. This is at the back page of the Daily Nation. And NEMA plans plastic bags, I should say, surcharge regulation. This continues on page 11 of the Daily Nation today. And suicide link in deadly school fire. Detectives pursuing, among others, a link that a suicidal Form 1 student could have caused fire at the dormitory in Nairobi, Girls Nairobi. Let me just repeat that. Detectives pursuing, among others, a link that a suicidal Form 1 student could have caused fire at a dormitory in Moi Girls School in Nairobi that killed 8 as grieving parents wait for the agonizing process of identifying the bodies of the children through DNA technology. This story continues on page 2 of the Daily Nation today. The Standard is up next, and this is your splash today. Raila Uhuru, I don't want nusu mukate. Power sharing, Odinga dismisses Uhuru. Ruto claimed that he is not keen on election, but wants a coalition government with Jubilee. He said he can't work with Paul fraudsters. Ruto sustained attack on CJ Maraga, and this story continues on page 8 and 9 of the Standard this morning. 50 police officers down with cholera is another story that you want to follow. And you can see also related pictures on the front page of the Standard this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Star. Chebukati wants Chiloba Nyabuto out in IBC purge. It says IBC chairman is keen to have some key officers shown the door. Others targeted are Legal and Public Affairs Director Praxid Torore, Voter Registration and Electoral Operations Director Immaculate Kasait, and ICT Director James Mohati. And this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star. And you can see also a related picture on the front page of the Star as well. On other news also inside the Star, Hassan Omar to break his month-long silence after his loss to Joho. You'll find all the details inside the Star today. Also the People Daily, we have it for you. Jubilee, NASA draw fresh battle lines, it says. And you can see related pictures. Confident of victory, Ruto tells IBC to set new poll date. Even as leaders sustain onslaught against Judiciary, while Raila vows not to participate in poll presided over by a same polls body, defends Supreme Court overruling. And this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the People Daily today. We have also the Business Daily, which is up next, and this is your splash today. Eyes on fresh poll as Nairobi Security Exchange plunges 92 billion shillings in a day. Supreme Court ruling nullify presidential election triggers panic sells. And this story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily. Also, KCB set to auction 119 defaulters' vehicles. You can follow all that on page 4 of the Business Daily. And KRA adds taxpayers 30 days to file returns is another story on the front page of the Business Daily as well. In solidarity, there is a standalone picture here, and we can see residents demonstrating in support of Chief Justice David Maraga in Kisii Town yesterday. They urged President Uhuru Kenyatta to stop criticizing the CJ and his Supreme Court colleagues for nullifying his presidential poll victory on Friday. The court ordered that a fresh election be held within 60 days of the ruling. This is on the front page of the Business Daily. You can follow all that story. Also, CBK Mammon Imperial Cell is another story that you want to follow on corporate news inside the Business Daily this morning. Let's see what we have also across the border. But before we go there, we have Taifa Leo. Masharti ya NASA, vigogo wa muungano wa mtaka Chebukati asafishe nyumba yake kabla ya uchaguzi mpya. That is what we have on the front page of Taifa Leo. And you can follow that story also on page 2 of Taifa Leo today. I think also is in order maybe to dovetail that with Mwananchi from Tanzania, which is also the Swahili paper in Tanzania. Kinana atoa kauli nzito ziara ya Rais Magufuli. This is in Tanzania. You can follow the Mwananchi in Tanzania. Also, we do have the Citizen. And this is what is on the front page of a Citizen. 2 billion shillings lab stands idle for nearly 2 years. Facility housed at Muhas was established with assistance of Turkish businessman. Genetic laboratory unused despite its potential to save millions used to send samples abroad. This is what is on the front page of a Citizen in Tanzania. And also, Magufuli orders repossession of 14,000 acres in Tanga. That story continues on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. In Uganda, we have the Daily Monitor, and this is your splash today in Uganda. There you go. Police help 87 drug traffickers to escape. The drug traffickers were arrested at Entebbe Airport in the last 13 years. A police professional standard unit audit report implicates a senior police detective. And this story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. 2 judges to hear 61 cases in one day. This is all about intervention. This is part of a pilot appellate mediation meant to reduce on the cases. This story continues on page 7 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Lopei Road becomes impassable, and you can see how it went yesterday. You can see UPDF soldiers and policemen across the section of Lopel Bridge that connect Monoto, Kitido, or Kabong, and a team, it's not really a team, but a beam, I should say, districts. This is on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. And we have also the New Times in Rwanda. How revision of repo rate impacts economy. After the central bank reduced key repo rate in December last year, and then again in June, a large section of the banking sector enthusiasts were skeptical on impact of the move. You can follow that story on page 3 of the New Times if you're waking up in Rwanda. Also, Rwanda welcomes U.S. court decision to uphold guilty verdict for woman jailed for genocide. This story continues on page 2 of the New Times in Rwanda. And RDB's good problem, more gorillas, less habitat. Right, that's how it goes. You can follow that story also inside the New Times as well in Rwanda. This week's the East African is holding this particular splash. Democracy at work, it says. Historic ruling, Supreme Court asserts judiciary's role as an arm of government as it announced President Uhuru's election and sends Kenyans back to the polls. The verdict: Electoral Commission failed, neglected or refused to conduct the presidential election in a manner consistent with the dictates of the Constitution and the Elections Act. Electoral Commission committed irregularities and illegalities in the transmission of results. The irregularities and illegalities affected the integrity of the election, thereby impugning the integrity of the entire presidential election determination and the Article 140 subsection 3 of the Constitution. That you have also the full report inside the East African this week. We have a Sadba story. Uganda seeks more land for pipeline. It's all about the new design, more space required to accommodate infrastructure. And you have the full report on page 4 of the East African this week. Also, Tanzania's opposition seeks unity. It's all about cooperation. CUF chief says party will work with Chadema to unseat CCM in the next election. And that story continues on page 6 of the East African this week. I'll be remiss if I don't show you what we have as editorial cartoons today. We begin with what is in the People Daily, and this is what Steno has drawn for you. Of course, butting heads right now is Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta. Jubilee versus NASA. The Supreme Court of Kenya is yet, of course, has made that decision that we go back to the polls, and this is how it looks. Of course, they began in earnest with their campaigns. Also, we have Gado, who has drawn this today. Yesterday, go to court. We have faith in our judiciary. Today, hail the historic court decision. This is what Raila is saying. We certainly have leadership crisis, and we can see what is spewing from the mouth of the president right now is this vomit of stuff, blankety blank, Supreme Court, Wakora Court, of course, and this has really drawn a lot of flack from every quarter of this country as far as the dignity of the Supreme Court is concerned, and the president acting presidential, especially, of course, with his utterances. What is really rolling off his tongue right now. This is what has been aptly captured by Gado inside the Standard today. And finally, let's see what we have inside the Star, and this is what Victor has drawn for you today. Observing the observers on Kenya elections, right? Carry there with a walking stick, or this is the blind man's stick, groping in the dark. We've had, of course, also a lot of flack, or they've really come under fire. These are the international observers. So make sure you grab a copy of the dailies today for these riveting, compelling stories in our dailies, the Daily Nation, the Standard, the Star, for these stories as well. But for now, as always, let's put this horse into full run by looking at the highlights. Even in church, Jubilee leaders sustain attack on Supreme Court judges.
I'm appealing to His Excellency the President to be a little bit sober up. Because even the way he's addressing the public, he appears not sober.
The Uhuru Court and the Twoli ask President to stop attack on the judiciary.
First case was reported on Saturday night, at about 5. Then after that, other cases followed.
And 57 police officers hospitalized in Kajiado and Nairobi with cholera symptoms. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto are on the spot over the sustained attacks on the judiciary following the nullification of the presidential election by the Supreme Court. Court Secretary General Francis Atwoli wants the president to, quote-unquote, sober up and desist from what he termed irresponsible talk after the Supreme Court nullified his re-election. Third Way Alliance presidential candidate Uhuru Aukot also called on President Kenyatta and the Jubilee leadership to stop being emotional over the judgment and stop intimidating the judiciary. The Supreme Court has not commented on the attacks by President Kenyatta and the Jubilee party, but the judges and magistrate body has moved to shield the judiciary from the mounting attacks.
The The way he's addressing the public, he appears not sober. He should be himself. If I was President Uhuru Kenyatta, today I would be still thinking what to do. You don't just hit the road immediately, started politicking, and so you would make a lot of mistakes in the process.
Lakini wajue hawa watu watano wa sita, kwa sababu Wakenya bado wataamua, watugojee baada ya uamuzi wa wananchi. Tuko na hawa hapa kwa hapa. Tuko na wao hapa kwa
the whole learned bench. Wakora, you did not bribe them. They refused bribery. If you attempted, if anybody attempted, how do you call them Wakora? Justice Maraga ni mtu wa kanisa, is a committed Christian, a Seventh-day Adventist.
President Uhuru cannot claim to be a president, yet does not respect the rule of law. You are entitled to disagree with the judgment of the court, but it is too low on your part, Mr. President, to call the judges Wakora.
And leaders from the Jubilee Party have sustained their attacks on Supreme Court judges after they nullified the re-election of Uhuru Kenyatta, led by Deputy President William Ruto. The leaders called on the IBC to announce the new election date for the fresh presidential election so that they can prove they deservedly won the presidency.
Heshimu uamuzi wa koti, sio kwa sababu tunakubaliana nayo, lakini kwa sababu tunamwogopa Mungu. Muombe wale walio mahakamani, wale wanaosimamia mahakama zetu, ili wajue ya kwamba katika uamuzi wao kuna Mungu mbinguni ambaye ndio muamuzi wa kweli.
Constructive criticism of any decision of any court, any arbitration is allowed by the law, by the constitution.
Na wale ambao wanatuandama kwa njia mbaya, I will tell them to read Psalm 35 verse 6. It says their path shall be slippery and dark, and the angel of the Lord shall pursue them.
We want by tomorrow IBC to give us a day before tunataka tumalize hii maneno ya uchaguzi before the end of this month, tukue tumerudisha Mheshimiwa Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta na William Samoei Ruto.
After this election, there must be an overhaul of the whole judiciary, kuanzia Supreme Court mpaka huku mashinani, pahali watu wanalia kuna shida mahakamani.
Tunarudi mashinani kwa sababu Mungu si atumani. Mungu ni mwema. Na najua ushindi huu utarudi mahali unatakana kuwa.
Na uchaguzi ambao tunaelekea sasa, mashindano sio na sisi na kitendawili. Kitendawili tulimumalizia tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8. Mashindano sasa ni kuamua, ni koti inaamua rais ama ni wananchi wa Kenya.
And the National Super Alliance has spelled out new demands for their participation in the fresh elections called by the Supreme Court. Among the demands is the firing of IBC CEO Ezra Chiloba and the non-inclusion of Al Ghurair printing farm among companies to be considered for the fresh printing of the ballot papers. Speaking at a rally in Huruma, the alliance further wants the Jubilee leadership to respect the judiciary as they castigated the president's latest onslaught on the Supreme Court judges.
Mimi pale mkutano wa mwisho Hurupa niliongea wazi, nikasema Chiloba, nikarudia Chiloba, nikarudia Chiloba, Chiloba must go home. Kama kutakuwa na justice Kenya hii.
IBC tunasema we do not want to hear that Al Ghurair is going to print the ballot papers again.
Kuna returning officer wengi ambao ni askari, serving police officers were acting as returning officers. Askari mengi wa special branch, NIS, walikuwa returning officers. We want to see a brand new list of returning officers in each of the constituencies. Wale ambao walishirikiana na wakora hatutawakubali. Nimesikia wadosi wangu wakisema hawana shida na Chebukati na watu wake, lakini haiwezekani kwenda katika kura na Chiloba na watu wake wakiwa katika ofisi.
haiwezekani. Sisi tuna habari kwamba tayari Chiloba na watu wake wameshakaa, wanaanza kupanga mipango ya siku za usoni. Hiyo haiwezekani katika taifa la Kenya, my friend.
Kura itapigwa kulingana na sheria ya taifa la Kenya. Na vile tumesema huwezi kulazimisha Wakenya waende kwa kura ambayo itasimamiwa na wezi.
When a company, a multinational company, is complicit in subverting democracy in a peaceful country like Kenya, and the regulator in France is saying nothing, and people have died, we want to find out what are the ethical standards that the French government has for companies that are now complicit in what you call subverting democracy.
Sasa enda tafuta printers wa presidential ballots wengine, sio wale wakora wanaitwa Algurea ambao representative wao hapa ni ndugu ya mtu mmoja ambaye tunajua. Mbona wanaanza sasa kutusi mahakama? Wao ndio wanatuambia sisi ati mkilalamika endeni mahakamani. Sio? Sasa sisi waende mahakamani. Tutatoa ushahidi. Si mahakama imeridhika. Alafu nini tena? Uhuru Kenyatta, heshimu mahakama. Hapana tusi jaji mkuu. Hapana tusi bwana Maraga. Wewe ni nani? Huna ruhusa ya kusema watu 6 wamegaidi amri ya Wakenya milioni 15. I say so because those 6 judges of the Supreme Court are constitutionally given the authority to act on behalf of 40 million Kenyans.
Now, in proverbial terms, one will say the shoe is on the other foot. In the wake of what they see as an unfavorable Supreme Court decision, President Uhuru Kenyatta and fellow politicians in the Jubilee party appears to have dramatically shifted from positions they had taken just a few weeks ago. When he was declared winner, President Uhuru Kenyatta had urged those unhappy to go to court, and his deputy William Ruto even asked Kenyans to give the court time and respect its decision. Uhuru, Ruto and Jubilee have undergone a spectacular transformation in the wake of the Supreme Court judgment nullifying the August 8th presidential election.
Our friends who have yet to accept the outcome, we continue to appeal to them that we have extended our arm and a hand of peace and a hand of friendship, and for them to use whatever legal mechanisms that have been created by our wonderful Constitution to express their dissatisfaction.
Even when we have disputes, we have become gentlemen and ladies, and we are solving them in a manner that is constitutional, that is legal, and that is peaceful. That is a cause for all of us as Kenyans to celebrate the maturity of our democracy. Sisi wote tuheshimu uamuzi wa wananchi na vile vile tuheshimu uamuzi wa mahakama ndio tuweze kwenda mbele kama Wakenya.
Election is not an event. It is a process from the beginning to the end. Taking the totality of the entire exercise, we were satisfied that the election was not conducted in accordance with the dictates of the Constitution.
As much as I disagree with it. Hapo awali nilikuwa rais mtarajiwa. Si ni kweli? Si Maraga na watu yake hao wakora hao wamesema ati basi hiyo uchaguzi ipotee. Si ndivyo wamesema? Sasa mimi sana sio rais mtarajiwa. Mimi ni rais ambao amekalia kiti. Na tukimaliza na uchaguzi, hawa watu tutadeal na wao. Msijali.
wajipange tu ile wamefanya huko, they have had their day. Ours is coming. Ours is coming. Because we shall interrogate everything. We shall interrogate everything. How a Supreme Court made a decision to overturn the supreme will of the people on the basis of things that have nothing to do with the Kenyan voting. Ati sijui form, sijui gani ilikuwa haina, sijui muhuri, sijui ilipeperusha, sijui kwa njia gani. Hiyo ni mambo ya upuzi sana, wapotee kabisa.
Watajua hata sisi ni wanaume. Ngoja. Na itakuwa hivyo.
Sheria iwe ni nzuri wakati na kupendelea, lakini ikichukua hatua ambaye haikupendezi, huipendi. We can't work like that, my brothers and sisters. We must be a nation that follows the rule of law.
It is not possible that if the judiciary makes an unfavorable ruling, you say the judiciary should be dealt with.
All right, and we have our panelists to slice and dice some of these conversations that we have as far as the Supreme Court decision is concerned. The President and his, of course, the Deputy also speaking from both sides of the mouth as far as the instruments of democracy are concerned, with judiciary being one of them as well. So do they really hold, of course, in decorum these offices when they have such statements rolling off their tongues, even calling the judiciary wakora? Right. This morning, I've created the first time with Professor Anyang Nyong'o, who is the governor of Kisumu. Also, we do have with us Farah Maalim, who is a former Deputy Speaker of the 11th Parliament. We do have with us as well a member of the 10th Parliament, I should say. Also, we do have with us Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, who is the Member of Parliament from Ndaragwa. We're eagerly waiting for Alice Wajome to join us, and also Dr. Shem Ochodo, who is the global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Right, so we've played a lot of what we've perceived to be, of course, doublespeak from the executive as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. When the ruling is not in the favor of the executive, of course, now they're really casting aspersions on the Supreme Court as well, which has really drawn a lot of flack from every quarter of this country. First of all, it being the instrument of democracy, and the president, of course, also being one part that holds the government as well, the judiciary, the executive, the legislature. What do you perceive to be, actually the perception to Kenyans that the president is giving, him being the symbol of unity for this country, Professor Anyang Nyong'o?
Well, thank you. I know. Before I say anything, I'd just like us to remember certain provisions in our Constitution. I want us to go back to Chapter 6, Leadership and Integrity, and read particularly Article 73, which I think is very important in this matter, when the Chief Justice said that...
Pass me the Constitution.
When the Chief Justice said that the election was not held in accordance with the Constitution. Let's just see Chapter 6, Leadership Integrity, 73.1. Authority assigned to a state officer. A is a public trust to be exercised in a manner that, 1, is consistent with the purposes and objects of this Constitution, 2, demonstrates respect for the people, 3, brings honor to the nation and dignity to the office, and 4, promotes public confidence in the integrity of the office. And then B, vests in the state officer the responsibility to serve the people rather than the power to rule them. Vests in the state officer the responsibility to serve the people rather than the power to rule them. And 2, the guiding principles of leadership and integrity include A, selection on the basis of personal integrity, competence, and suitability, or election in free and fair elections. Then B, objectivity and impartiality in decision-making, and ensuring that decisions are not influenced by nepotism, favoritism, other improper motives, or corrupt practices. Okay, I'm reading this because, yes, I remember one person said that, I think it was Eugene Wamalwa, that Kenyans are free to criticize even Supreme Court rulings. But then, when you're doing the criticism, as a public officer, you have to bear in mind your responsibility in terms of integrity. Indeed, if you can prove to the nation that the decision that the Supreme Court made was based on was bereft of personal integrity, competence, and suitability, or was influenced by other issues like nepotism and so on, then you put the facts on the table. But you can't just rant against the Supreme Court without that. Secondly, let me go to Article 129. Article 129 is very important because it vests certain responsibilities in the executive. I will read 129 in conjunction with 136. 129, the executive authority derives from the people of Kenya and shall be exercised in accordance with this constitution. Executive authority shall be exercised in a manner compatible with the principle of service to the people of Kenya and of their well-being and benefit. Again, service to the people, not just exercising power. I mean, I was shocked when the president said, hawa watu watajua sisi ni wanaume. I mean, that's not really very good for a head of state. But for any public officer, if you go to a meeting and say, wewe utajua mimi ni mwanaume, that's now just thorax politics, they say it. Now, if we go to 136, 136, you say the president shall be elected by registered voters in a national election conducted in accordance with this constitution and any act of parliament regulating presidential elections. Now, I think when the Chief Justice said that the election is a process and not an act and must be conducted in accordance with the constitution and the acts derived from the constitution, if you're going to disagree with the Chief Justice, you only need to lay on the table whether the election was conducted according to this constitution and that. I think going into the public and expressing anger without necessarily going in accordance with the law, I don't think it's doing us a lot of service. In 2013, when we lost the case in the Supreme Court, the Prime Minister sat and said, I don't agree with this decision, but I respect it. He never said anything again after that. Never ranted against the Supreme Court, never called Willie Mutunga any names. In any case, they remained friends. And I think that's what should be done in that position, so that we are filial to the guiding principles of leadership and integrity. Otherwise, the public will really not look at us as leaders, as people helping the public to implement the principles of this constitution, when we ourselves behave in public in complete disrespect of this document, which is very fundamental for national unity, sustainability, and development.
Well, let's see from Farah, when it comes to the Constitution, we should be the final arbiter in terms of when it comes to ruling. The president is not really upholding, sacrilegiously the Constitution with the behavior that we're seeing right now. Do you hold with that view?
Yeah, I hold that view, and it's a very, very valid ground for impeachment in the event, ordinarily, if you're going to be a country of laws and not a country of men and women, because dictators and autocrats are created by the people. In every dictator initially comes in as a populist who is elected by the people. Look at the late Marcos of Philippines. He was a hero, a decorated hero in the struggle for independence and other rights, but later on became the kind of person he became. So basically, Kenyans need to think very, very loud and try and stop this impunity that's setting into a political structure. Because right now, unashamedly, the president and his deputies stand out there and say, "Watatuona." They will see us, which means they intend to use every means possible, the tyranny of numbers in the parliament and everything else, to reverse all those gains we made for the last 50-some years. From a legal standpoint, we made some criticism of the Mutunga judgment last time, but we did not call Mutunga Mkora or anything like that. And the legal one we did is that, you see, at that time, the logic of arriving at the verdict that they arrived at was, regardless of the illegality that's committed. You see, that's a principle that essentially is contestable. Regardless of the illegality that has been committed by one side, the quantum of the votes that you have proven, do they, if they were taken into consideration and deducted from the president, will they substantially alter the results? You see what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Now the principle of committing an electoral offense itself and rigging was more or less justified by that court that time, in the sense that they say as long as it's not so substantial as to alter the outcome,
yes,
which in my opinion was a very serious wrong on law itself. But here is somebody who was coming, and I was watching myself the proceedings in the court. But when I saw one thing, I said this case was lost by ABC and lost by Jubilee. When Smoking Wanjala asked the lawyer that a voter comes in, the voter is given 6 ballot papers, and he intends only to vote for one person, what does he do with the other 5? And the lawyer said, no answer for it. You see what I mean? How do you account for the other 5? The lawyer said, no answer for it. So that in itself is like, if you remember very well, the O.J. Simpson case, in which, I mean, there was powerful circumstantial evidence that was weighed against O.J., and O.J. looked like he was guilty. And finally, it was that if the gloves do not fit, then acquit him. And the gloves did not fit. You see, that one thing completely destroyed, like a pack of cards,
yes,
dominoes, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It destroyed the case of the people who are trying to convict O.J. Simpson. The same thing in this case right now. 500,000+ votes here are seen as being, what do you call, cast for the president, and it's not reflected in the MCA, in the MP, in the senator, in the governor, and people want to say that they came in and only voted for the president. What was done to the other 5 out of the 6? The case was lost. It's an open and shut case. So and then of course they came up with lawyers who were basically some kind of politicians. I mean, the lawyers who came out there were poets and politicians, and the rest of it, except Fred Ngati, give him a lot of credit for that. But you see, here was evidence itself, admissibility of evidence, is a subject matter that essentially every lawyer has got to be able to understand it very well. So this case was lost. If they had a reason to say that we are not happy with the verdict, they would have done it the way we did it last time. We criticized the fact that you are justifying an illegality and merely saying that anybody can do anything illegal provided the quantum or the what is being able to be proven, yes, does not upset. It's like saying, you can commit this crime, but what was the magnitude of that crime and how does it upset the results? No, that was wrong in our opinion, and we were arguing it from a point of law. We're arguing it from a point of you see what I mean? Yes. But then here were people, we don't see an argument. You keep on saying, oh, the will of 15 million people. Why was the Supreme Court put in place in the first place? It was either to ratify or to overturn what basically is saying is the will of the masses of the country. All right. Why would you want to hear a petition? There are 2 options in a petition. You either sustain and basically say that this election was done in a fair and allowed, like Uhuru came in 2013, or you say that this was done.
Right, thank you. Right, let's hear from Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. First of all, it seems like this really came from the left side for the executive with this particular ruling, especially for, of course, the President Uhuru Kenyatta. And what we can see, maybe he's smarting from, the reaction and the shock out of it. That's why we can see all these things and all these statements rolling off his tongue as far as the judiciary is concerned, first of all. But do you think if he won the elections credibly, why should there be bugbears and fears to actually go for the second running, right? For the second running, if he knows that he won fairly. Why all these statements?
Thank you, Debarl. One is that allow me to thank the people of Ndaragwa for having given me the privilege of serving them for another 5 years on a Jubilee ticket. And I take the opportunity to also congratulate Governor Anyang Nyong'o for having been elected in Kisumu and Mheshimiwa is Wajome for having won the Kandara parliamentary seat.
And using your tyranny of numbers to deny also Farah Maalim, the Speaker of the National
and of course, congratulating Farah for having made a good attempt.
It's not over yet.
Also,
wait until it's over.
It's always good to see people whom you have been with have those positive results. I think, and losing is painful. Losing an election is painful. An election is even more painful when it's been taken away from you by the courts. Because when you go to court, you expect to win. You don't go to court because you want to lose. You go to court because you expect to win. When you're also taken to court and your win is taken away by the court, not by the petitioner, it's taken away by the court, that's even more painful. But I think it is it's telling to note a couple of things. One of the things that I think I would want to bring out is that since 2013, the Supreme Court was verified by the now NASA brigade for all the 5 years. And what surprised me is when Justice Maraga opened his remarks by saying, you know, we were verified, or this court was verified for 5 years for having done this and this and this. And from the onset, it's like this is already a court that has been intimidated, because you expect to be criticized when you make a judgment. But to come up and own it in public and even in a sitting and want to indicate that your decision going forward will have some bearing to that criticism of 5 years, it's not very comforting. And I think it's also, I think what we also need to note, and I don't know how, we will wait to see the judgment, but I don't know how the court will also reconcile itself with this. When you go out looking for votes, my responsibility is to get people to vote for me. That's what I want. I want to go and get more voters on my side than my opponents. And that we did as Jubilee. When the agents refuse to sign a form, or when the transmission is messed up by, and I'm saying messed up because this is what we are doing, by the institution responsible for it, and then you penalize me, having done what was expected of me, that is painful. You expect the judiciary to do a little bit better than that. They should penalize me for mistakes that I did, but not another agency. You should penalize that agency, not me. So this, I'm really waiting to read these judgments in the 21 days that they have told us. But if me as the person, when the president himself as the person being petitioned is absolved of any doing, not even having, and his votes are not even charged. And then you go to the point of saying, you are now, we have to go back and vote, you are about to get a little bit upset. And I think that is why I am really waiting to read this judgment, because it also puzzled me. Like
so certainly you're insinuating that, of course, the president or the court should have held, you know, the presidency credible, but the process itself, they should have been castigated, that is the IBC.
But you know, Debarl, and you have to be very careful with this. This is a can of worms. I am competing with my neighbor here. If he now knows that all that he needs to do is mess up the process when I'm beating him on the votes, then none of us will ever win in this country. You cannot blame me for the process while I went out and did what was expected of me, and even being very diligent on the code of conduct. I am there doing everything that needs to be done, and I bring my votes 1.5 million more than yours. But then you just go to court and say, you remember even though those agents in one of the constituency did not sign, and you bring a form that is not signed by the agent. You just bog it down on the issue of the process, which I, as a competitor, had nothing to do with it. That is something that we need to know as a country. What does that mean? I don't think it's a good thing for us. Any person who would want to go to court now and challenge, including what Farah is saying, you just go and say the process was not right. Why? Because one from the 34, some characters you may have influenced at a given point did not sign, and you could easily have influenced them. That judgment is about to give you difficulties, whether you like it or not, irrespective of which side of the divide you are in or on.
All right, thank you. Of course, we shall be drilling deeper on that. Let's just hear from Alice Wajome. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. May I also take this as an opportunity to congratulate my colleagues here, including Farah, who did a very good job, and we look forward to maybe him winning the next round.
Very soon, in a few months' time.
Thank the people of Kandara for giving me an endorsement for a second term. I'm really grateful. And they are following this election that we won. The three of us sitting here was conducted at the same time, through the same process, through the same transmission, with that of the president. The presidential ballot has been singled out to have been affected by the transmission, by the material used, technology, and all that. So in a nutshell, what we are saying, those who are actually saying that the system did not work, the processes were full of irregularities, then is that actually nobody was elected. There were 6 ballots casted at the same time, or cast by the same people, and by end of it all, the only ballot that is being questioned and has been nullified is that of the president. So for me, then, it means there is a lot of hypocrisy in this thing. You are talking about the process, the transmission. My colleagues here are talking about over 500,000 votes. And this, I do not know and understand how that was ascertained. And that's why we are saying the full text, the content and the text of the entire judgment is very important for us so that we can analyze. And you cannot stop us from criticizing the summary that was given. And that is allowed. I think the only thing we can do is being contemptuous about it. But we are entitled to criticize it. But you know, right now, if we had the reasoning that informed the finding, if we had the facts and the evidence summarized by the judges in the full text, then we would be possibly saying, fine, maybe there is a reasoned way of arriving at the nullification. We don't have that. And sadly, the fact that, and I have said this before in another forum, sadly, you know, before this judgment, we know that the NASA team, the brigade, the entire brigade, actually threatened the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, and said that it is their time to redeem themselves. So for me, is it possible that this judgment was not about evidence, facts, and the case, but as an opportunity for the Supreme Court to redeem itself? And if that was the case, and you remember the NASA team, Kalonzo Musyoka, Wetangula, and all those people said every single judge of the Supreme Court should give reasons, should say why they find in a certain way. That did not happen. And the judges appreciate that there were concerns, and legitimate concerns, about delivering a judgment without a summary, without the full content. And given the constraint of time, then they repeated the same mistake. Should we also then not tell them to redeem themselves? Because if NASA said, look, you did a bad job in 2013, you allowed the presidential ballot to stay, and now you did not even give us reasons that time when you are doing that, so this time you must give us reasons. For me then, if you are talking about 500,000 votes, where was it when the voter went early in the morning to cast the vote, including Orengo, who was the lead counsel, including Raila himself, including Uhuru? The single material, important material we all interacted with, including myself and my brother sitting here, is the ballot paper. Kenyans who voted know that they received the ballot papers, and those papers are in the ballot box. All right. So why did the court fall short of going then to verify through a recount. Of course, some people are arguing that that recount was not sought for. The court, suo motu, on its own motion, can actually order a recount, especially if it thinks that process or the difference in terms of votes is actually showing the need to allow a recount.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, of course, we shall be drilling deeper on these and after other issues as well. Now we know NASA is calling for the CEO and some of the IBC officials to actually be shown the door. So what do we also see way forward in terms of the time constraints that are there right now? Are we really strapped for time? Do we have enough time also to constitute another secretariat? The debate about the secretariat and the commissioners that we saw also the chairman saying that when they came to office, of course, they did not sort out the issue of the secretariat. So why now? That's the question also we're asking. Why not then when they came to the office 7 months ago? So don't go away. Much more coming up on the other side of a break. Make sure you tune in also, or you cross over to our social media platform and use the hashtag AMLiveNTV or Decision 2017. See you on the other side of the break. Welcome back. You're watching Decision 2017. It is 7 o'clock on the nose. And of course, the conversation continues apace with our panelists here on the way forward right now as we eagerly wait for the presidential election that will be happening some days from now. Now, of course, we know Kenya has been looking forward for a robust institution, and Kenyans have struggled for decades to institutionalize the rule of law. We have fought, shed blood, lost lives and poverty in search of constitutional order. Intrinsic in this is a desire to establish independent institutions that provide checks and balances against each other. It has been a quest to give voice and secure the sovereignty of the people. And sovereignty of the people is delegated to Parliament, the Executive and the Judiciary, which institutions are obliged to exercise that authority prudently and judiciously. The cancellation of the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta by the Supreme Court is a single most outstanding explication of the supremacy of the rule of law and maturation of our democracy. It demonstrated independence of the judiciary and signaled the end of the era of impunity that has painfully assailed this country for far too long. Chief Justice David Maraga captured this in his preamble of the ruling, postulating that the greatness of a nation lies in its fidelity to the Constitution and adherence to the rule of law. The Constitution must have the teeth to bind and protect the right and will of the people. Although it is in order for the National Super Alliance leader Raila Odinga and his deputy Kalonzo Musyoka and their supporters have reasons to celebrate the outcome, really, this is not a win for NASA or a loss for the Jubilee Party. It is a triumph of the will of the people, and henceforth, this must reign supreme. We continue the pace with our conversation with our panelists here in studio. I'm all in court this morning with Professor Anyang Nyong'o, who is the governor of Kisumu. Also, we do have with us Farah Maalim, who is the former deputy speaker of the 10th National Assembly. Also, we do have with us Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, who is a member of parliament from Ndaragwa. Also, Alice Wajome, she is a member of parliament from Kandara. Also, joining us this morning, who's running late, and I can see him, right? You can just walk on to the studio. This is also Dr. Shem Muchodo, who's a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance, running late, of course, caught up in traffic. Let's continue with this conversation, but also I want to capture what has been rightly drawn by our cartoonist, Gado. This is on the 14th page of the Standard this morning, the editorial page, and this is how it looks today. Yesterday, the president was saying, go to court, we have faith in our judiciary. Today, hail the historic court decision. That is what Raila Odinga is saying. And of course, spewing from his mouth, this is what has been rolling off the tongue of the president lately. Blankety blank, Supreme Court, Wakora Court. And of course, this is the president who's muttering from that decision that was made by the Supreme Court on Friday. Let's continue with this conversation and move on. Looking, first of all, on what the demands of NASA is right now. They want the IBC CEO and some of the officials to go home, including the ICT director, that is James Mohati as well. Do you think this is the right call right now, since we're really strapped for time to not really have these officials? Why now?
But I think the IEBC is also holding crisis talks. I mean, you see in the papers today, the chairman himself has pointed out the people that he wants to leave because they are responsible for the mess of the IEBC. I mean, I agree with my friend Jeremiah. If the mess is indeed the responsibility of the IEBC, but of course the IEBC does not act alone in a system where executive power is so overwhelming and where the security forces are pervasive everywhere, you must look very carefully whether the IEBC was acting in isolation of the security system and the executive, because we essentially have an authoritarian presidential system, notwithstanding a very democratic constitution.
Yes.
Okay. So the Chebukati himself has said, no, we must look at our system and get rid of those individuals who are responsible for the mess. We must distinguish between the IEBC as an institution and persons working in the IECC exercising the powers and responsibility of that institution. And those persons are the ones who have misused those powers and responsibilities contrary to the Leadership and Integrity Code. That's what I was pointing out earlier. So it's very important that we look at the decision of the Supreme Court, which said that the process went wrong, and that process was not carried out without persons responsible to it. And those persons must be identified in the shortest time possible, and men and women of integrity put in that institution who will not let us down in 60 days' time. We only have 60 days. So the IEBC itself must move with speed, the commissioners, because the commissioners are the public face in the IEBC. They represent the people of Kenya in making sure that institution performs its duty as an institution of the state.
Right.
And I think that's a process that must be carried out very fast and very responsibly, and without any kind of pulling of strings on either side of the political divide, because we must have an election in 60 days, which is proper. I
remember we had this debate here and we said, why can't we now, so to speak, expunge the whole commission,
well,
right? We go away, we do away with the commissioners and we do away with the secretariat as well.
I mean, that's also a possibility. That's what I suggested in Kisumu the other day. In Ghana, the United Nations have conducted elections.
Yes.
In Vanuatu, an island like that, the United Nations conducted elections. In Namibia, just before the independence elections were conducted by the United Nations. The United Nations has the capability and capacity to do this, but we need as a nation to recognize our weaknesses and our shortcomings and say at this hour of need, rather than rant and call each other names, we need something that will take us over the bend to the other side. We have an election coming in 60 days' time. Let us not keep on trying to dot the I's and crossing the T's when you don't even have a page to write those I's and the T's. Let us do the right thing, get a competent body to do it. Short of that, I'm saying we have only two options. Short of that, then we must make sure that that institution is run by responsible men and women who will be filial to the Constitution, particularly leadership and integrity. To me, that is my minimum demand.
But the reality on the ground is, do we have the time to do this? And if at all we have to go the United Nations way, what sort of provisions do we have in the Constitution? And what really constitutes, calling the United Nations to run our elections from...
Those are the things that I think should be examined. I'm not saying that you just do it like that. And these are proposals, they're broad proposals, based on the problem that we have. I'm saying if somebody has any other proposal to make, they are welcome. But to me, there are only two options. We clean up the IEBC, because we can't use the same individuals who have messed up the thing in 60 days and accept a different results. If you're going to do the same thing all over and over again and get different results, you're not going to. That's just a reality. So I think rather than become angry, smart, whatnot, rant at each other, let us look at the problem on the face and say, in 60 days' time, how do you want to have an election that will be satisfactory to everybody who participate? That's all.
All right, I think that's a good question that we should probe this morning. Yes. How should we have this election? Should we have the Chebukati wanting Chiloba and Nyabuto and, of course, the ICT director to go home as well? Do we have the luxury of time to make sure that we constitute another IBC?
Not really another IEBC. Look, let's make a distinction, Debarl, between IEBC as an institution.
And the Secretariat.
And the Secretariat and the people responsible for the mess. That's what I'm saying. Look, if you are the chief officer or the executive of an organization and you lose, let's say, a business, you make a big loss, you must look at your business setup and say, why did we make the loss? Was it the accountant? Was it an internal audit? And you look at it and say, look, these ones must go. We get new ones. And that is possible because the people of qualification of audit and all these things, you see. But you can't say we fold up the company today because it has failed. And of course, a time comes when the company is doing so badly that it has gone into receivership. So if we decide that the IBC cannot do anything, we make those. All I'm saying, we need to make those decisions expeditiously.
Right, Farah Maalim.
You see, Debarl, we are now blaming. We're not blaming the Secretariat, and the Secretariat is full of blame. There's no doubt about that. The ICT, the CEO, and the rest of them. But you know, one time there was an issue between the commissioners themselves and the CEO. The CEO did across-the-board posting of returning officers. And the commissioners decided, no, they must have an input in there. And in the process, the commissioners actually had a powerful input in there. The whole thing was cancelled, and they had to redo it again. Your assumption would be they are redoing these things because they feel the CEO might be partisan in certain things. But my position is that the very commissioners, and particularly one particular commissioner who was supposed to be in charge of the human resource deployment in there, was worse than Chiloba, as you put it right now. And basically, this is the guy who put in the returning officers in everywhere who were basically friendly to one side to make sure that the mess that was done was done. So this thing comes all the way from the commissioners down to the returning officers, down to the presiding officers and the deputy presiding officers. Because that recruitment was also done by the returning officer in conjunction with commissioners also on the ground here. So I think the whole lock, stock and barrel needs to be, in my opinion, overhauled. Because we don't want to come back again to court one more time here, because then you have the same structure, you have the same servers, and you have the same, what do you call, tallying and transmission systems and the rest of it, and then we get back into the same. I don't think it's right. We have a provision in our constitution that we are not going to sacrifice substantive justice on the altar of technicalities. Because we have timelines, let's find how we are going to deal. First of all, let's see how we can overhaul these things, the whole. Maybe call in the United Nations, an impartial, non-partisan arbiter to come and help us do this. We have no faith in ourselves. This is a fact that Kenyans need to know. Right. You know what I mean? But just a moment. If our own president, who was a president courtesy of the courts, the Supreme Court, today when a ruling is made against him, and he is now forced to go for a rerun, would go there and call the courts Makora, and his deputy will say, they've had their day, we'll have our day and we'll deal with them. Right. You know what I mean? Yes. Now, who is going to trust the other?
Fantastic. We've crossed that junction right now. The president has, of course, made all this matter of statements, but we want to see what is the way forward.
That's the point. Right? That's the point. The way forward. The way forward.
Well, the clarity I want on this. The clarity I want on this is that yes, we are here. We want a new secretariat. We want new system. We want new systems, but the issue of United Nations, if we feel that this will be the fair arbiter on the running of this election, at what point in the Constitution do we allow United Nations to come into play?
Look, we had a problem in 2007, 2008. We had a powerful crisis in here. We were almost going to become a failed state. We came with a national accord, courtesy of the support we got from the international community. We negotiated, we had a dialogue, we came up with a national accord. That national accord allowed us to save our country. If we are going to look for a system in which a free and fair election that essentially is acceptable at the face value, it has to be fair and it has to be seen to be fair, is not in place, we will have a problem. So let us first of all start from where the problem is and begin now going through the technicalities and finding out whether it can be done within the 60 days or we need more time. If we need more time, fair enough. Right. We can still look for the more time and go back to the Constitution. But let me tell you one thing. The accord was not in the Constitution. We went back and created the accord. Let us create, I'm not talking about Bukatenusu. Let us create a new accord to allow us to have ample time for us. We don't even mind if the president is going to be there for another 1 month or 2 months. But with a manner that, of course, as an interim president, will have no powers to sack anybody, no powers to employ people. The system is going to remain the way it was before. But we have an impartial arbiter and have free, fair, transparent, and credible election.
All right, but it seems... Yes,
yes. Farah must agree to move on. You can't be stuck in the 90s of just agitating and saying things that are not accurate. The president was not in office to 2013, courtesy of the court.
Yes.
He was in office because he was voted there. Why we are pained is because the substantial win that we got 2017 was taken away from us by the court. Not because there's anything we did wrong, but because there are people who did not do it right according to the court. And the court found it necessary to take the win away from us, so they have punished us for the mistakes of others. And up to where we are, allow me to finish, Prof. Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish.
But finish.
Yeah, but allow me to finish. You had your time, and yes, you know, and I must tell you that I liked what you said in Kisumu, when you told people to allow things to go as normal, let people come to work and let us sort out these things. That's the kind of leadership we want.
You're happy with that, yes.
But I'm saying that it is important to note that when the court takes the win away from you, because that's what this court did. Up to where we are, people are still struggling. The NASA brigade is still struggling to say that these elections were rigged by Jubilee, and there is nowhere, there is no shred of evidence that these elections were rigged at all. I think it is important to say this. You can actually see the first statement that was issued by the leader of NASA was that we are not going to have elections with IBC in office. I am happy now they have read the law, because there is no way of sending IBC home in 60 days unless you desire to get the country in a crisis. As to whether IBC shouldn't be allowed to manage their internal affairs, that should be the case. They should be allowed to manage the internal affairs. If clearly there are agents who did not do what was expected of them by the law, then it is not right for them to be allowed to conduct another election. But we must make sure again that we don't play politics. We do not go to intimidate these institutions like NASA did intimidate the Supreme Court until they got what they wanted out of the court.
But that's not true.
That's my view. It may not be true to you, but it is a view that many Kenyans are holding.
All right.
That's the view that many of us are holding. No. And that's what is paining us about this court. It was a court that was intimidated for 5 years and eventually gave in to intimidation. And that's why we are where we are. So I want to say that there's no even room for calling for the UN.
But can you
it is still,
just hold on.
Still, let me come to what you're asking.
Yeah, I just
you're
want
asking whether we can call it the UN.
I can't let you fly with that, because if you say they were intimidated for the last 5 good years, I want you now to actually objectify, enumerate, give me some good points where there was intimidation from NASA.
What else would you want to hear, Debarl? Other than Maraga himself opens the sittings, of course, by saying, you know, for the last 5 years, we've been vilified because we did this and this and this. That's clearly giving in. It shows you can't hold. You're already showing weaknesses. They should be beyond those kind of attacks, and that was clear. But this is what I wanted to say. So to me, it is clear. He admitted. He started by admitting. He admitted that they were intimidated for 5 years. And I want to say this again. Even the call that at the UN should now come and conduct our elections,
but we need to clarify.
Still a further.
He didn't really mention NASA. Yeah, was vilifying them for the last 2 years.
Who was vilifying for the judgment of 2013?
Legal scholars.
But look,
all over the world.
I mean, who was vilifying them for the 2013 elections? Even if it is not NASA per se, it is the NASA brigade led the vilification, and of course the international community have joined in. You can't take me that away from me. You didn't allow me to say this. The calling of the UN to come and conduct our elections is still a manifestation of the kind of mindset that we have. How do you now come and say, now that there are people who do not allow forms to be signed, we call in the UN? It still shows your mindset. You can't still hold on, you still have no faith even in the institution that gave you that win.
All right, let's hear from Alice.
You are asking in what way was the court intimidated? From 2013, the Supreme Court was accused of giving President Uhuru Kenyatta an unfair win.
And
the ballot was not accepted. Even to date, NASA team, led by the Honorable Right Honorable Raila Odinga, has never accepted or considered defeat to Uhuru Kenyatta for the 2013 win. And therefore, there has been this narrative that we stole elections. And it has been traded through and through. And the person who has borne the burden of maybe helping them to prove that we stole election is actually the court. The court was always verified and told, you never wrote a full judgment, that is one. You delivered the ruling without giving us the benefit of seeing the reasoning why you said Uhuru Kenyatta won in 2013. It is in the public domain that the Honorable Raila Odinga also told the Supreme Court, we do not care what judgment you give. We have a plan B. We are proceeding on with our plan. Those statements are captured in the media widely and read widely. So for them, it wasn't very necessary. But they also told the court, look, you have an opportunity to redeem yourself as a court. What does that amount to? It is that, look, if you don't give us a win, you will not have redeemed, a win in this case, you will not have redeemed yourself from the misdeeds of 2013. Immediately after leaving the court, the lead counsel, Senator James Orengo, at the footsteps of the court, said, the first thing he said was that Chebukati and the commissioners must go. So you see, this must have been expected by the court. Because even as we are delivering a judgment, and I agree with the lawyers who said, this is obviously a very political judgment, but we needed the legal basis upon which you are nullifying the elections. There was no legal basis because up to now, we don't have the reasons, we don't have the reason to find the findings, we don't have facts stated by the judges, we don't and so therefore, there was intimidation. Definitely there was intimidation. Indeed, as the brigade of the NASA, and I say this with great respect, walked in that court, they must have known what the judgment is. Even the aura, even the flare that they walked in, and therefore immediate celebration. And you know, we are quite decent because even when we won, and we still insist that we won, there was very restrained celebration because you want to put the country together. I don't think that we will be shy, that we shall be intimidated by demonstration, by whatever people want to say now, that there is this judgment, that we are not going to say we won and we will stay on that we won this vote. And the nullification was not founded in law. It was founded in politics. And it is unfortunate because we are still saying, why not count that ballot? Why not scrutinize the ballot itself? So that you tell Kenyans, these votes were stolen through these systems, and that is why we have arrived at this. Why did the judges fall short of going into the ballot?
All right, thank you. And of course also, one will ask also, why also not allow, NASA access also to the system itself. Just a moment, to the system itself. Why also not allowed to actually see the logging trails from the system itself? And this is where now, Dr. Shemo Chodo, you really come in.
Hold on. I don't know whether I finished. You know, Debarl,
yes.
Unless we are a banana republic, if the nation has produced a document in this country, if the nation is the owner of a document, of some material, do you need an outsider to come into your processes, into your systems, to verify whether that document is correct or good document? Which institution in the world will expose itself? I don't think the public institutions...
But that is a public institution. And of course,
they are public
the Access to Information Act allows any Kenyan
they are
to actually
public
get...
institutions, but they are benchmarks. There are known tools and...
that we're given to understand. But if you have a court order, that is diametrically different. And you're allowed to obey the court order.
Let's say from but some court orders are not... As a lawyer, I want to say that some court orders actually could be wrong. Some court orders are not enforceable. It was stated by counsel for IBC that they were unable to enforce. In legal terms, it is known.
Which we had flimsy reasons from the lawyers as well, maybe, because they were saying because of time constraints that France is asleep right now, we cannot. This was some of the reasons that were given by the lawyers.
You need to secure your systems.
Okay, let's hear from Dr. Shemachola. Yes.
Apologies for the lateness. I'm hoping Sonko will sort out the mess in the city, traffic, garbage, drainage, and all that.
No, you wake up
having said that, allow me to compliment the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court for the historic ruling that they gave and the wisdom that prevailed. Why do I say this? I say this because I think it's good for NASA for obvious reasons. They have a second chance to win or lose. And also, it's good for Jubilee too. I don't know whether to sanitize or legitimize, so that if they win, there is no question anybody raises about that win. So to that extent, I think it's good this has happened, and it has helped cool down a little bit the temperature. Having said that, allow me also to compliment Jubilee supporters that they took it in state when this happened. That's really the way things should be. Having also said that, I think we need to reduce the 21 days that the court has to give the full details of why they made this determination. You know, for now, people are toiling, are walking in the dark. We really don't know exactly what is it that the court found wrong. And with due respect, I think we should change, even as we add them more time from the 14 days to make a determination, maybe to 21 days, because you can't also hold the country in suspense for too long. But we also need to reduce the time from 21 days, say, to 7 days. I don't see why the court cannot give a comprehensive ruling within that time. Having said that, I don't support the group that's saying that we bring in the UN. Article 88 is very clear. That's the mandate of IBC exclusively. But unless IBC itself decides to outsource, which they can do, to UN. But in the circumstances, and this is part of why I'm saying I think we are jumping the gun. Let's see the scripts of what the court found. If there are particular officers who are culpable, whether it's Chebukati, and I don't know why NASA is being soft on him, or it's Chiloba, or whoever else it is, let's go for those particular people who are culpable, because they're the people who had an answer to give. But you specifically asked the issue of access to the servers. Debarl, I'm not too sure what the parties had hoped to find by accessing the servers. I do know there's been also a bit of debate about election observers, which is a bit different from election auditing. You know, auditing is a post-event, which takes a little longer. Observation is a bit different. As to whether even if people had access to the server, while I disagree with my sister here, if court gave a directive that something needs to be done, the least that could have been done, not that I agree with that court decision, but the least IBC should have gone back to convince the court why this is not possible. Personally, and I've said it many times here, we need to declare electoral systems as critical national infrastructure. What it means is like telling people, let's go inspect in the public domain what's at the DOD. That's basically what we're doing by saying, let's access these systems. It can be done, even accessing this, the DOD can be done. The Defense Committee of Parliament can do that. But there are well spelled out criteria in which that's done. It's got to be done in camera. It's not everything that can be done when everybody's watching. And short of totally getting rid of the system that we have, the moment you expose it all, it's liable to easy rigging next time, unless we now just throw out the entire KIEMS and bring in a new system. So personally,
but when you say that it should be done in camera,
yes,
what do you really mean? Because this is not it should not be in the public. These were actually two parties that were allowed to actually gain access to the system itself.
Yeah, by camera here. I think I watched even on social media, even some of the media, people talking and arguing in that committee that was meant to access this facility. There must be a prescribed format, which we don't have, which is something that we need to think about moving forward. That in future, in fact, we focused a little too much on technology, but not on processes.
Thank you. All right, let us hear from Professor
Let me just say the following. First, you know, Parliament has substantial powers in our nation. The sovereignty of the people is vested in Parliament. And according to Article 94(4), Parliament shall protect this Constitution and promote the democratic governance of the Republic. If Parliament so decides that in order to promote the democratic governance of the Republic in the coming elections, we need to have the United Nations to come and help us, it is within the rights of parliamentary responsibility. And if the people of Kenya, who are sovereign, decide to petition Parliament to do that, we as citizens have the right to petition Parliament to do that. I think this inferiority complex that we display, that when we are sick, we don't want a doctor to come and cure us, will just lead to our early demise. I mean, I think this jingoistic nationalism that we can't call external people to come and help. And yet we had the observers here, the carries here, giving us lectures the other day. And some of us were applauding. The same people that are applauding are now saying we don't need external intervention. I mean, we can't be that hypocritical. And last time when we had a crisis, we sat down as a country and brought their code. So if we are underestimating the kind of crisis we are in the long run, it is us who will suffer. I've always said that in Africa, notwithstanding the painful struggle we're involved in the second liberation to being democracy, we are now having what I call authoritarianism in an electoral phase. In other words, you have elections, but you don't change the political system. Essentially, you perpetuate authoritarianism. Absolutely. With substantial authoritarian powers given to the presidency. And so long as the presidency is serving us, we applaud and defend and change tune from day to day. I mean, it's a whole dam of hypocrisy. So I'm saying, look, Chebukati himself has said here that they have to look at their systems and people are responsible while awaiting to read the judgment, because he knows. He knows there were problems. He knows NIS invented that system. He knows. Because the executive wanted a certain result. And therefore, if we bury our heads in the sand like the proverbial ostrich, we'll just suffer in the end. And by the way, just before the Supreme Court made a decision on Thursday, we were going to bury our dear mother and friend, Mama Christabel Ouko. And on my way to the burial, I'd stayed in Kisumu waiting for the Prime Minister perhaps to come and we go together, and he wasn't coming. So I tried to call him, I couldn't get. Finally, they called me, and then I asked him, what message do I give to the people? And he gave a very Solomonic message. Tell the people whatever decision is made tomorrow by the court, either way, by the Supreme Court, either way, we are winners. And for anybody to think that the so-called, by the way, the word brigade, Alice, is very demeaning. We're not a brigade. We're leaders. And I think we should respect leadership. He said a very Solomonic statement. Either way, we are winners, which was a very calming statement. And when I made that statement in that dome, it went dead quiet. So the next day, people woke up in Kisumu feeling much more at ease than otherwise. So I think what we need to expect, what we need to do now, let us wait and read the judgment of the court and see the reasons the court gave for saying that election is not an event, it is a process. That process is not just managed by the IEBC. That process is also managed by the executive. In that process, we people in Kisumu had the military and all these people coming ahead of the decision to terrorize the people. That was part of the process. You can't divorce it.
Right. We can't divorce it, but we need to, because Prof, you say, yes, the Parliament, as you've just demonstrated from Article 94, Section 4, Parliament shall protect this Constitution, promote the democratic governance of the Republic. If you bring the issue now of UN to Parliament right now, of course we know they have an upper hand as far as the numbers is concerned as well. But we know we'll get now stuck in a rut again as a country.
What I'm saying. What I'm saying.
Okay, let him clarify. Then
please understand what I'm saying. I don't care what decision Parliament makes, but I'm telling you, Parliament has the responsibility and the powers to make that decision. whether they make it to have the UN in or not. But I'm telling you, it's not an impossibility, because if Parliament so decides, let me just explain.
Yes. For information.
Let me just finish. If Parliament so decides that in order to promote the democratic governance of the Republic, if the interpretation of the democratic governance of the Republic requires that you have the UN body, but as members of the UN, we are also filial to certain provisions of the UN. And being members of the UN, we can call the UN here anytime to help us. Like the UN is helping us in Somalia.
A little clarification.
So let me just finish. You can clarify later.
You wait.
So the interpretation by Parliament, what at this point in time constitute democratic governance of the Republic, you must allow Parliament to decide that. And I'm proposing as a citizen of Kenya and a former parliamentarian that in order to guarantee the democratic governance of the Republic of Kenya, let us guarantee a free and fair election by having a much more neutral arbiter in the name of the UN. They can work with the IBC. That's my proposal. You disagree with me?
All right, let's hear from Alice. We'll come to you. Just briefly, you're clarifying, just briefly.
Just briefly. Parliament doesn't have this power that Professor is talking about. Actually, Article 1 itself talks the supremacy of representatives. Representatives is not only Parliament, but also executive. But 255, there are what we call protected sections of this Constitution, which cannot be changed by Parliament. They can only be changed through a referendum. 255. And 255, in this regard, it talks about the sections of the Constitution that can be changed. They've proposed 255G says some of those that you can't change by Parliament, that you have to go to a referendum. The independence of the judiciary and the commissions and independent officers, those ones have to go to the referendum. So the point I'm saying here is that no, I'm talking of the independent commissions. Read 255G.
All right.
You need to change it.
Okay, thank you.
Because Article 88 gives that mandate exclusively to IBC.
I don't see the usefulness.
Let's say from Alice.
Yeah, you seem to be belaboring on this question of how then can we get elections done in 60 days if we have to start thinking of how to change the IBC, the how to bring in the AU. Number one, this, and from the word go, there has been talk of a caretaker government. We have heard this story, and we have said before, these people know they will lose elections. So the easiest way to get into government is not through the ballot that they refused it to be counted. It's actually through ensuring that the systems, the institutions that are managing the elections are sabotaged to the level that by the time they come to carry out elections, and look, from January, these people were not even well prepared. And maybe we should accept that from the beginning. Now, if you change the IBC right now, what you are saying, look, let me finish. No, I'm understanding you very clearly. No, I'm understanding. Actually, what you are proposing, the two of you, now we are not, look, let's not lecture each other here. Let's have opinions that are also.
All right, clarify your point, then we move on.
Let me finish.
Yes.
You know, he is trying to stop me from saying what they are now proposing is a caretaker government, because when the IBC, when the judgment, when the vote, when the ballot was invalidated, when the Supreme Court is one of the institutions that are supposed to protect the Constitution. So what they did is to remind Kenyans that if we invalidate this, another ballot has to be taken within 60 days. And therefore, when you start talking about removing Chebukati, not even correcting the mistakes, let's assume he made mistakes or there were mistakes done by his officers.
Thank you.
I don't think the talk of bringing outsiders is the cure. The cure is we say, okay, these officers did mistakes. Then can we remove this one or two?
Right.
And then within 60 days, we agree as a country that we must hold elections within 60 days. There is no talk of elections.
But listen, we as Kenyans, we're watching, and we're seeing everyone holding their own corner. They're not flinching. Jubilee is saying they're not allowing anyone to be touched within the IBC. CORD is saying they want the UN. we are the citizens. We'll be caught. We'll be caught as people who are held up in this stalemate. We'll not move anywhere.
There will be no elections in 60 days.
Fantastic. That's what I'm asking.
By that.
Yeah. So we don't want to be actually locked in a stalemate because of you two people, because you're haggling over when you're haggling over the IBC officials as well. Farah Maalim, please.
You see, Debarl, it's important to capture the object and the spirits of the provisions of the Constitution itself. The substance of it. The end result that is emphasized in that. If we are going to have to do certain things to be able to achieve that, timelines is important, but this is more important. It says in Article 86, at every election, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission shall ensure that whatever voting method is used, the system is simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent. So when we say that we want to go and check the servers and all this infrastructure for this, it has to be simple as it's put there. It has to be accurate. It has to be verifiable. Who is going to verify? Here you are saying that this is a national security, nobody else can come into it. It's not the military. This has nothing to do with anything. It is there. And then it says, the votes cast are counted, tabulated, and results announced promptly. The results, and this is where the problem is. We are saying the counting, the tabulation, the announcement, the tallying, the transmission, that's where the problems are. So when we have to go through all this, the results from the polling station openly and accurately collected and promptly announced by the returning officer. Hang on a minute. You had your turn. I want to discuss. When you go to the Constitution here, and it talks about, it's not good sometimes to try and mislead people. It talks about the sovereignty of Kenya, of the people of Kenya, the territory of Kenya. These are the things that need a referendum. Changing the timeline of the election itself, let's say we need 2 more months, and saying instead of holding it 60 days from here, we need 90 days and we'll be able to deal with these things. It's not an issue that needs a referendum. All it needs is, just a second, all it needs with provision. You will tell me the provisioning. With this particularly, because it's the supremacy of this Constitution, the territory of Kenya, the sovereignty of the people of Kenya, the national values and principles of governance mentioned in Article 10, 2A to D, the Bill of Rights, the term office of the President, the independence of the Judiciary and the commissions, and independent officers to which Chapter 15 applies, the functions of Parliament, the objects, principles, and the structure of the devolved government, or the provisions of this chapter.
Why don't you read 140?
Hang on a minute. These are the things.
No, just read 140.
Let him finish. Then we'll read 140, please.
Can I just finish? These are the areas that need a referendum.
Yes.
We can decide that we need 60 more days or 30 more days to be able to get this process right. You see, the most important thing is the process. Why do you want to rush it? We heard it last time. You already claimed that they were not ready when we were holding these elections because of all those haggles. We got it wrong. We are in trouble right now. The courts are.
Can I read 140?
The courts.
Just a moment.
Can you relax?
Can I read it?
Let him finish.
No, he doesn't know.
No, just let him finish. We'll read all of us as Jeremiah Kioni reads that.
Let me tell you the other thing. We don't trust one another. We can't trust the same electoral commission that did what it did. And those of you who were there in places where this real rigging took place, like the whole of Northeastern Province, you should understand, sometimes, one time when Lincoln was talking about slavery and those who were supporting, he said, maybe it should be tried on you for you to understand to appreciate whether it's a good thing. Sometimes when you don't suffer the problems that other parts of this country suffer, you tend like you're outside. You're not in this universe. So the point I'm saying is that we will not trust this electoral commission as it is right now, the IEBC, unless it is completely overhauled, unless the problems that are indicated in the full text of the judgment itself and the problems we have suffered ourselves are cured. Those mischiefs are cured. We're not going to go for elections to go through the same thing.
But what if you get other officials and they're
compromised
as you think?
That's why I'm saying.
Are we going in a vicious cycle?
Look. When you talk of the United Nations, can I just finish?
Please finish.
When you talk of the United Nations as an independent arbiter, you were applauding the role of the international community when Kerry and other people came in here.
We are still applauding them.
Kerry and others came in here and said it's a free and fair election.
We still are applauding
Now that they have changed it,
just a moment.
Just a moment. Yes. Now that they have changed their mind, by the way, they have changed it, so you will never be. I don't think you'll be doing the same things again. They've already changed their mind. Well, now that they have changed their mind, you'll call them all sorts of things. Imperialists, you know, Western hegemony. We are an independent country. We're no longer a colony.
Thank you,
That's
Farah.
the kind of stuff you go on. We want independent process to be done for Kenyans,
All right.
for fellow African Kenyans.
I still want to encourage Farah to move on from the 90s, the fundamentalist testaments of 90s. Because when you start telling us many things that we were hearing them when you were even teenagers,
Like what?
It doesn't fry in well. But you've read to us Article 86, I think, Article 86 of the, and you have said that whatever voting method is used, the system must be simple. What is simpler than counting the vote that was casted by Wajiko at the polling station and telling us?
It's a process.
Period.
The process.
And this is what we failed to do. We then went to technical things of transmitting, and we know what Wajiko voted.
Oh, yeah,
even as we sit here, what Wajiko is asking, I casted my vote at this polling station. Why are you not telling me how many votes were here at the polling station? That's what the court should have done.
I don't know about
this other process is a
they-
technical process that it needs to be perhaps subject to a reform, because we'll continue having these difficulties if the simple thing is like they were doing with those, were they bids in the West Africa, count my votes at the polling station. And that was done.
I don't know.
And why don't you allow me to finish? Allow me to finish, Debarl. That was done, and the courts failed to go and count that ballot again. If there were difficulties in these other processes and they discovered, perhaps through the audit that they were doing, because I think the court was actually the one doing the audit, why didn't we go back and just count that vote? And there is nobody who had a problem with that initial point where we were feeling from 34. Before that,
okay, just a moment.
Let me just finish.
I don't know about Wanjiku, but what Halima cast in there was not relayed in
Thank
here.
you.
Yes,
What Omoro cast in there
yes,
was
why
also
is
not
it
relayed.
then,
just a moment.
Debarl, allow me to finish also. You can't give all the time.
Finish.
Let me finish. Why is it then that even Farah is having a problem with counting what Halima casted?
Because of the
that
system.
billing? Just go and count.
Just let him finish.
I mean, again, the other thing that is amazing is that we keep saying that democracy is only democracy when it serves us to win. We now want the UN to come and do the voting, do another electoral process. Why? Because we don't think that this IEBC as it is may give us the outcome that we desire.
Thank you.
I think that is also something that we need to be careful about.
All right,
and finally,
yes.
finally, we have a case here where the court ordered IEBC to conduct the elections within 60 days. And the 60 days, it's not an invention of the court. It is in the constitution. So we must allow IEBC to conduct elections within 60 days if they think within their internal system, the individuals who compromised the process,
All right.
they should be allowed to do it. Again, without our interfering with it.
As also we
and
have,
finally,
yes. You finally
if you decide that we want to cast votes to see who becomes our leader, allow it to happen. When it doesn't bring out your leader, and this is in response to Professor Anyang Nyong'o, if it doesn't produce the leaders you deserve, you don't condemn the process.
Thank you. But what you're not telling us is, even if you want Wanjiku to have counted that particular vote on that particular bucket or ballot that we're having, right? We want to also question the whole process of how that particular ballot was, how it got into the ballot box itself. That's what we ask. But the question is not really counted. The question is, how did that particular marble that you're talking about, maybe in Gambia, really got into that particular bucket?
But it was put by Wajiko.
Yeah, it was put by Wajiko, yes, but we want to see the entire process, because that's where...
Which is the entire process? What is simpler than saying, let us vote for the leader in this place and we put this as a ballot and vote?
Just a moment, yes.
The counting is still part of the entire process.
Yes.
So for me, recount was part of the entire process that we are talking about. So anyway, let me now read Article 140, sub-Article 3. It says very clearly, if the Supreme Court determines that the election of the president-elect to be invalid, a fresh election shall be held within 60 days. That is page 121, Debarl.
Yes.
Page 121, 140, sub-Article 3.
We agree. Yes, yes.
Actually, no, let me no.
Let him finish.
No, please. You said long time that we should not interrupt each other, and I want to go with that prescription.
Go on.
Yeah, that a fresh election shall be held within 60 days after the determination. A determination has already been given. Our president has said he doesn't have a choice anyway, that, look, I am ready to go to the ballot because the Supreme Court has ordered. We knew that if it is cancelled, because we said, of course, even they have said, it was either allow it or disallow. It has been disallowed. What is the end result? Go back to voting. So now you bring the rider. We cannot. So is this what they were looking for? So that then there will be no ballot within 60 days. And that's what we are calling constitutional crisis. Because if we don't have an election in 60 days, definitely other issues will be raised. The validity of the president continuing in office, or in the meantime, who will be in the office. I think we must, as a nation, endeavor, because we will also not agree. And I'm saying this, and we, as Jubilee, we have a vote that won. We will also not agree to use part of the judgment, so that now we are told this is good part of the judgment, but this one of complying within 60 days, you know, we
so
can now...
So what are you insinuating? There is a ploy by NASA actually to
create a ploy to frustrate the judgment that they have benefited from.
All right, briefly, let's hear from Shem, then we come to you, Prof, please. We'll get clarification. We're winding up. Very briefly.
In all fairness, currently there's no common Jubilee position, there's no common NASA position. Even from Farah and Anyang, you can hear they're saying different things.
No, our common position is we are going to the ballot.
Just give him his time, please. No, just give him his time. No, we give you time, please. Just give him his time, please.
The infrastructure that messed.
Thank you. No. Shem, please, Shem.
Let's go by the rules. Okay. Yeah, so that's clear that there is no common official position. I want to encourage the two coalitions to have a common position. However, I wanted to look at, just briefly, that article. One, do we have power to get UN to look at, to oversight our elections?
Yes.
My answer is that's an exclusive right in Article 88 for the IBC. Yeah. The second question is this changeable?
Yes.
Okay, because can it be changed in Parliament? Farah was reading it selectively. Article 255, which talks about how we can amend the constitution. Because my answer is you cannot bring in UN.
I think you made that statement already.
No, it's important.
We don't need to belabor it because we are stuck for time.
But there's something that it talks about. There are those protected sections which you can only change.
That you did make. Thank you. Thank you. 30 seconds, sir. 30 seconds.
Look, Debarl, maybe Wajome wasn't here and Alice wasn't here. I said very clearly, the UN is not a substitute to IEBC. Indeed, if you read page 1 of the Nation, IEBC itself already says some senior staff could be forced out. What I said was the following. One, let's give the IEBC time to clean its game.
That I agree.
And if the IEBC is capable of conducting those elections in 60 days by cleaning up again, so much the better.
Thank you.
But there's another alternative. Listen. By the way, the IEBC works with UNDP. It works with the donors and all these things. The UN coming to work with the IBC is nothing new. So I said, indeed, the UN has helped African countries during election, Ghana being one of them, Namibia being another. They have the capacity. There's no need we shielding ourselves in some point ethnic nationalism that we don't want them to come and help.
Parliament for that.
All right, we need to wind up.
So what I'm saying,
don't need parliament. If IBC fights,
let me just finish.
IBC can outsource.
Let me just finish. I said, look, I said two things. Please,
I think we're saying the same
be logical.
No, we said we allow each other time.
Listen.
All right, thank you.
Be logical. What I'm saying, apart from that, if indeed Parliament deems it fit, they have the powers to do so, just like we did. And by the way, just like we did in 2013, 2020, when we have that. We also did it when the IPPG.
Without a referendum.
Listen.
All right. My music is up.
Let me finish.
All right, thank you. All right, we need to wind up at that, please, because we're really stuck for time.
You just
thank you for your insight. We really do appreciate. We're stuck for time.
We'll continue this conversation next week.
No, but listen.
Remember you as governor of Kisumu.
Doctor, listen, they're important.
The doctor could be very good in ICT, but let me just give him a small lesson in law, which all these folks understand.
But